Snow fell in gentle flurries over the city of Westbrook, transforming the gritty urban landscape into something almost magical as twilight descended. Christmas lights twinkled from storefronts, their colorful reflections dancing across the wet pavement where holiday shoppers hurried past, arms laden with packages, minds focused on destinations rather than the journey. In a world increasingly divided by wealth and status, where we carefully curate our interactions and guard our resources, sometimes the most profound connections form in moments of pure, unguarded compassion, when one soul recognizes the humanity in another, despite all outward appearances suggesting they have nothing in common and nothing to gain. On the corner of Maple and Fifth, outside the warmly lit windows of Giovanni's Italian restaurant, this is how our story begins with Olivia Taylor, a 26-year-old first-year teacher whose kind heart remained undimmed despite circumstances that might have hardened another. With determination in her eyes and weariness in her step, she was about to discover that sometimes the greatest gifts we give return to us in ways we could never imagine. Olivia Taylor, 26 years old, was a first-year English teacher at Westbrook Central High School. Her appearance reflected both her modest means and her practical nature. Chestnut hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, minimal makeup worn more out of professional obligation than vanity, and clothes that were carefully chosen for durability rather than fashion. The worn leather messenger bag slung across her body contained 32 ungraded student essays, a dog-eared copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, and a carefully maintained budget notebook that tracked every penny of her inadequate salary. 5 months ago, Olivia had entered her classroom for the first time, idealism shining in her eyes despite warnings from veteran teachers about the challenges of Westbrook Central. Located in one of the city's struggling neighborhoods, the school served students from predominantly low-income families, many facing obstacles Olivia had only read about during her privileged upbringing in the suburbs. She had arrived armed with creative lesson plans, innovative teaching techniques, and a genuine belief that literature could transform lives, that somewhere in her classroom sat the next great American novelist, poet, or journalist. If only given the right guidance and opportunity. Reality had proven more complicated. Budget cuts had left her classroom without enough textbooks. Administrative requirements consumed hours better spent on lesson planning, and her students, though often brilliant, carried burdens no teenager should bear, from food insecurity to family responsibilities that regularly took precedence over homework. Yet despite these challenges, Olivia remained committed, staying late to offer extra help, spending her own money on classroom supplies, and learning to measure success in small victories rather than standardized test scores. Now, with the semester ending and winter break approaching, Olivia's financial situation had reached a critical point. Her starting teacher's salary barely covered rent for her tiny studio apartment and payments on her substantial student loans. The heating bill had doubled with the onset of winter. Her 10-year-old Honda had required emergency repairs last week, depleting the small emergency fund she'd carefully accumulated over months of strict budgeting. Today's paycheck, the last before the 2-week holiday break, had already been mentally allocated to essential expenses with mathematical precision. Rent, $875. Utilities, $143.27. Student loan payment, $312. Car insurance, $98. That would leave exactly $127. $49 for food and gas to last until mid-January. No room for Christmas presents, no budget for unexpected expenses, certainly no allowance for dining out or entertainment. Olivia's refrigerator at home contained half a carton of eggs, some nearly expired milk, and the remnants of a pasta dish she'd stretched across 3 dinners. The cupboard held enough ramen noodles and canned soup to survive the break, supplemented by the cookies and treats fellow teachers would inevitably share in the faculty lounge during the last week of school. She'd declined her wealthier friends' invitations to holiday gatherings that required bringing dishes or exchanging gifts, citing grading responsibilities rather than financial constraints. In her darker moments, Olivia questioned her career choice, wondering if passion alone could sustain her through years of financial struggle. Her college roommate now worked in marketing, earning triple Olivia's salary. Her younger brother, an IT specialist, had already purchased his first home. Meanwhile, Olivia calculated whether she could postpone her student loan payment without damaging her credit score, and darned the same 3 pairs of work-appropriate socks to extend their lifespan. Yet there remained an unwavering conviction that her work mattered, a belief reinforced whenever a struggling student finally grasped a difficult concept, or when a particularly disengaged teenager suddenly connected with a character in a novel. Just yesterday, Marcus Williams, a student who had started the semester refusing to write more than single-sentence responses, had turned in a 5-page analysis of themes. In their eyes were watching God, complete with personal reflections that revealed depths Olivia hadn't known he possessed. These were the moments that sustained her through budget spreadsheets and instant noodle dinners. These were the reminders that some forms of wealth couldn't be measured in bank statements or retirement accounts. As Olivia walked through downtown Westbrook toward the bus stop, clutching her last paycheck in her pocket, the snow fell harder and the city prepared for what would become not just a white Christmas, but a turning point in a young teacher's life. It was just after 5:30 p.m. on the final Friday before winter break when everything changed. The snow had intensified, transforming from gentle flurries to determined flakes that collected on eyelashes and dampened hair. Westbrook's downtown glowed with holiday decorations, shop windows displaying festive scenes far removed from Olivia's financial reality. She'd just left the bank, her paycheck now safely deposited, though already mentally spent on obligations. The cold had penetrated her inadequate coat, another expense deferred to some future, more prosperous time, and her thoughts turned longingly to the warmth of her apartment, distant though it was by bus. As she approached the corner of Maple and Fifth, Olivia's attention was drawn to a figure huddled in the recessed doorway of a closed business. An older man, perhaps in his 60s, sat with his back against the door, a threadbare blanket wrapped around his shoulders. Unlike many of the city's homeless population, he wasn't actively panhandling. Instead, he gazed at passing holiday shoppers with an expression that seemed more observant than desperate. His silver-streaked beard was surprisingly well trimmed, and despite his circumstances, there was a certain dignity in his posture. What struck Olivia most, however, was the book balanced on his knees, a dog-eared copy of John Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath. The incongruity of someone apparently homeless reading classic American literature stirred something in her teacher's heart. As she passed, the man looked up, momentarily meeting her eyes. There was no plea for help, no expectation, just a brief moment of human acknowledgement before he returned to his reading. Olivia continued a few steps, then paused, struck by an irrational but overwhelming impulse. To her left stood Giovanni's Italian restaurant, its warm light spilling onto the sidewalk, the aroma of garlic and tomato sauce a stark contrast to the cold. It was far from upscale, a family-owned establishment with checkered tablecloths and prices that, while beyond Olivia's current budget, wouldn't intimidate middle-class diners. Before logic or fiscal responsibility could intervene, Olivia found herself turning back. The man looked up again as she approached, surprise evident in his deep-set eyes. "Excuse me," Olivia said, her breath visible in the cold air. "I noticed you're reading Steinbeck." The man nodded, a small smile forming beneath his silver beard. "One returns to the classics in difficult times," he replied, his voice unexpectedly cultured, accent hinting at education. "They remind us that struggle is part of the human condition." Something in his articulate response confirmed Olivia's instinct. This wasn't someone defined by his current circumstances. This was a person with depth, with a story. A human being rendered invisible by a society too busy to look beyond surface appearances. "I'm about to have dinner," she heard herself saying, gesturing toward Giovanni's though she'd had no such plans. "Would you care to join me? It's too cold to be reading out here." Surprise flickered across the man's weathered face, followed by what might have been wariness. "That's very kind, but unnecessary. I wouldn't want to impose." "It's not an imposition. I'm an English teacher. Anyone reading Steinbeck is good company in my book." The pun was unintentional but brought a genuine smile to the man's face. "I'm Olivia." "Daniel," he replied after a moment's hesitation. "In that case, I accept your kindness." Olivia, the English teacher. Inside Giovanni's warm interior, they were seated at a corner table after only a moment's hesitation from the hostess. Olivia noted how Daniel straightened his posture and adjusted his worn coat with dignity, how he thanked the waitress with genuine courtesy as she filled their water glasses. There was a refinement to his manners that seemed at odds with his apparent circumstances. "Order whatever you'd like," Olivia said, silently calculating which bill she could postpone to accommodate this unexpected expense. "The lasagna is excellent here." Daniel studied her with unexpected perception. "You're being extraordinarily generous to a stranger. May I ask why?" Olivia considered how to respond without sounding condescending. "I teach at Westbrook Central. Many of my students face food insecurity and unstable housing. They're bright, capable people whose circumstances don't define their worth or potential." She shrugged slightly. "I guess I wanted to put my money where my mouth is, so to speak." Daniel's expression softened. A teacher not just of literature but of compassion. Rare in today's world. As they ordered, lasagna for him, the cheapest pasta dish for her, Olivia found herself sharing stories about her classroom challenges, her students' triumphs, and her belief in education's power to transform lives. Daniel listened with remarkable attention, asking insightful questions that revealed both intelligence and genuine interest. When their food arrived, Olivia noticed how Daniel savored each bite, eating with the deliberate appreciation of someone who understood hunger intimately. Throughout the meal, they discussed literature with surprising depth. Daniel's knowledge of American classics rivaled her own graduate school professors, his analysis of Steinbeck's themes reflecting both academic understanding and personal experience. "The true measure of society," he said at one point, "is how it treats those with nothing to offer in return. Your students are fortunate to have someone who understands that." As Olivia signed the credit card receipt, $47.83, nearly half her remaining food budget for the month, she felt no regret, only the satisfaction of having recognized another's humanity in a world that too often looked away. Neither could have known that this simple dinner, born of spontaneous compassion, would change both their lives in ways beyond imagination. 2 weeks passed and winter break drew to a close. Olivia had managed the holiday season with careful frugality, accepting her parents' invitation for Christmas dinner, which provided welcome leftovers, exchanging homemade gifts with friends, and spending quiet evenings grading papers and planning spring semester lessons. The encounter with Daniel had faded somewhat in her mind, though she occasionally wondered about him when passing the corner where they'd met. On the Sunday before classes resumed, Olivia was organizing her classroom, a task she preferred to complete before the official teacher workday. January sunlight streamed through the windows as she arranged desks and updated bulletin boards with quotes from the literature her students would study in the coming months. The knock on her classroom door was unexpected. The school was otherwise empty, the hallways silent. Looking up, Olivia froze, surprise rendering her momentarily speechless. Daniel stood in the doorway, but not the Daniel she remembered. Gone were the threadbare clothes and weathered appearance. This Daniel wore a tailored charcoal suit, a subtle blue tie, and polished shoes. His silver-streaked beard was neatly trimmed, his hair styled with professional precision. Most striking was his posture, confident, composed, emanating a quiet authority that transformed his entire presence. "Hello, Olivia," he said, his familiar voice the only confirmation that this was indeed the same man she'd encountered on that snowy evening. "Daniel," she managed finally, "how did you find me?" He smiled, stepping into the classroom. "Westbrook Central High School. You mentioned it during our dinner." He glanced around at the carefully curated classroom. "Your dedication is evident even when students aren't present." Olivia's mind raced with questions, her teacher's curiosity piqued by this unexpected transformation. "You look different." "Yes," Daniel acknowledged. "I owe you an explanation, and much more." He gestured to the chairs. "May I?" Once seated, Daniel regarded her with an expression both serious and warm. "My name is Daniel Harrington. Until 3 months ago, I was the founder and CEO of Harrington International Technologies." The name registered immediately, a global tech company valued in the billions, frequently featured in business news. "That's not possible," Olivia said automatically. "I understand your skepticism," Daniel replied. 3 months ago, I suffered what medical professionals labeled a nervous breakdown. The culmination of 2 decades of relentless work, a high-profile divorce, and increasing disconnection from any meaningful human interaction. He paused, his gaze distant. "I simply walked away. Left my phone wallet identification, Started walking with no destination in mind. Olivia listened, captivated despite her disbelief. I had millions in assets, Daniel continued, yet found myself genuinely homeless, anonymous. At first it was almost a relief. No responsibilities, no expectations, no facades to maintain. I slept in shelters, on benches. I observed humanity from an entirely new perspective. A sad smile crossed his face. Do you know how many people looked through me as if I were invisible? Hundreds daily. As if worth is determined by appearance alone. Not everyone, Olivia said quietly. Daniel's expression softened. No, not everyone. 3 people showed me kindness during those months. A shelter volunteer who found me the Steinbeck novel. A street vendor who shared his coffee on particularly cold mornings. He met her eyes directly. And a young teacher who saw humanity where others saw only circumstances, who shared her table and her limited resources without judgment or expectation of return. Olivia felt heat rise to her cheeks. Anyone would have done the same. We both know that's not true, Daniel replied gently. My experience proved otherwise rather definitively. He leaned forward slightly. 2 days after our dinner, my executive assistant finally located me. Apparently, someone at the restaurant had recognized me despite my appearance and mentioned it on social media. I've spent the past week resuming control of my company and re-evaluating my priorities. I'm glad you're well, Olivia said sincerely, though still processing this extraordinary revelation. I'm more than well, Daniel said. Thanks to you, I've rediscovered something essential that success had obscured. The transformative power of simple human kindness. And I've come today because I believe such kindness deserves recognition. Daniel reached into his suit jacket and withdrew an envelope, placing it carefully on the desk between them. This is for you. Olivia looked at it warily. I didn't help you for a reward, Daniel. Precisely why you deserve one, he replied, but it's not what you might think. Please, open it. With hesitant fingers, Olivia opened the envelope. Inside was not a check as she had feared, but a formal letter on Harrington Foundation letterhead. As she read, her eyes widened, and she had to reread certain paragraphs to fully comprehend their meaning. A full educational grant program for Westbrook Central, she finally asked, looking up at Daniel with disbelief. Technology upgrades, classroom supplies, college scholarships for graduating seniors. Daniel nodded. Fully funded for the next 20 years, with an endowment to continue beyond that. Your school has been selected as the pilot for the Harrington Educational Initiative. Olivia's mind raced through the implications. Students like Marcus would have genuine opportunities for higher education. Resources that had been mere wishes would become reality. Barriers to learning would diminish. This is, she began, struggling to find adequate words. The least I can do, Daniel completed. But there's more. He indicated the second page of the letter. The initiative requires leadership, someone who understands both educational needs and the human element behind statistics. The position comes with significant influence over fund allocation and program development. Olivia scanned the page, her pulse quickening. This position, it's substantial. The salary alone is more than triple what I make teaching. Yet, you would still be teaching in the most meaningful sense, Daniel said. Shaping programs that could eventually expand nationwide, creating opportunities for students like yours across the country. For a moment, Olivia allowed herself to imagine the possibilities. Financial security, the ability to enact real change, no more choosing between car repairs and groceries. But doubt quickly surfaced. I'm honored, truly, but I'm just a first-year teacher. Surely someone with more experience. Experience can be acquired, Daniel interrupted gently. Character reveals itself in moments of choice. When faced with a stranger in need, with nothing to gain and limited resources to share, you chose compassion without hesitation. That's the quality this initiative needs at its core, not advanced degrees or years of committee work. Olivia stood, moving to the window where January's sun illuminated her carefully created bulletin board. Quotes about hope, perseverance, and possibility that she'd selected for students who needed daily reminders of their own potential. What if I fail? She asked quietly, voicing her deepest fear. Daniel joined her at the window. In my experience, those most concerned about failure are least likely to succumb to it. He smiled. Besides, you won't be alone. The foundation provides resources and support. I'll personally mentor the program development. The possibility began to feel real, tangible, yet something still troubled her. I keep thinking about that night, Olivia said. If I just walked past you like everyone else. But you didn't, Daniel said simply. That's the point. Most people choose convenience, self-interest, or indifference. You chose connection. And that choice, seemingly small, requiring just a moment's courage, creates ripples we can never fully anticipate. He gestured toward the hallway outside her classroom. Your students need teachers in classrooms, absolutely, but they also need advocates who can change systems, remove barriers, create possibilities. You can do both. Olivia thought of Marcus, of all her students facing obstacles beyond their control. She thought of her own financial struggles, her deferred dreams. Then she thought of the moment she'd made the impulsive decision to approach a homeless stranger reading Steinbeck. How that simple human connection had felt right and necessary despite its impracticality. I'd need to finish the school year, she said finally. My students are counting on me. Daniel's smile broadened. I expected nothing less. The position will wait. In the meantime, you'll serve as consultant in program development, fully compensated, of course. As reality settled around her, Olivia felt something shift inside. Not just relief at her changing financial prospects, but a deeper understanding that moments of compassion could indeed transform lives, sometimes in ways far beyond imagination. Then yes, she said, extending her hand with newfound confidence. I accept. 2 years later, Olivia stood at the podium in Westbrook Central's newly renovated auditorium, watching with quiet pride as the first cohort of Harrington scholars received their recognition certificates. 27 seniors who, under previous circumstances, might have seen their potential limited by financial constraints, now held college acceptance letters and fully funded scholarships. Among them was Marcus Williams, no longer the reluctant writer, but a confident young man headed to State University's renowned journalism program. His essay on educational inequality had won national recognition, and he'd credited Olivia's early belief in him as the catalyst for his transformation. The auditorium itself reflected the broader changes the Harrington Educational Initiative had brought to Westbrook Central. Modern technology in every classroom, a maker space where students explored engineering and design, a fully stocked library with reading nooks and digital resources. Teacher salaries had been supplemented, reducing turnover and attracting experienced educators eager to participate in the innovative programs being developed. From her position as Executive Director of Educational Programming, Olivia had implemented changes that addressed not just academic needs, but the whole student, from food security programs to mental health resources, from parent support networks to community mentorships. The pilot program's success had already led to expansion in 3 additional schools across the state, with plans for national growth in the coming year. In the front row sat Daniel, no longer the isolated CEO, but an active participant in the foundation's work, regularly visiting classrooms and speaking with students about resilience and purpose. His company now led corporate America in social responsibility initiatives, inspired by his own transformative experience. This is just the beginning, Olivia said, concluding her address to the scholars. Your journeys will take you to places you can't yet imagine, just as mine did. Remember that success isn't measured by wealth accumulated, but by lives touched. And remember that sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change everything. As applause filled the auditorium, Olivia's gaze met Daniel's. He nodded slightly, the gesture containing their shared understanding of how a simple dinner had catalyzed changes neither could have anticipated. Later, at the reception, Marcus approached Olivia with his mother, who worked 2 jobs to support their family. Ms. Taylor, she said, eyes glistening with emotion, I don't have words to thank you for what you've done for my son, for all these kids. Olivia smiled warmly. They did the hard work. I just helped remove some obstacles. Marcus shook his head. It was more than that. You saw potential in me when I couldn't see it myself. You looked past circumstances to possibilities. He glanced toward Daniel, who was chatting with other students nearby. Mr. Harrington told me how you two met, how you saw him as a person when everyone else just saw a homeless man. "The best teachers are also students," Olivia replied. "That encounter taught me as much as any graduate course." As she watched Marcus rejoin his peers, students whose futures now held possibilities previously beyond reach, Olivia reflected on the extraordinary turn her life had taken, from counting pennies to directing millions in educational funding, from touching dozens of lives to impacting thousands. All because on a snowy evening when she could least afford it, she had chosen to see humanity where others saw only circumstances. Sometimes the most profound changes begin with the simplest choices, a moment when we choose connection over convenience, compassion over calculation. In the busy streets of our lives, we regularly pass opportunities to recognize the humanity in strangers, to extend kindness without expectation of return or recognition. Yet in those seemingly insignificant decisions often lie the seeds of transformation. For Olivia Taylor and Daniel Harrington, a chance encounter outside a restaurant became the intersection of two journeys: a struggling teacher's dedication to seeing potential beyond circumstance, and a successful man's rediscovery of what truly matters beneath the trappings of wealth and status. Their story reminds us that true wealth may be measured not in bank accounts or business acquisitions, but in our capacity to see others clearly and respond with genuine kindness. Perhaps the most valuable education comes not from textbooks or boardrooms, but from those moments when we recognize ourselves in others despite outward differences, when we choose to share what little we have rather than protect what we fear losing. And you, as you move through your day, what opportunities for connection might you be passing by? Whose life might be transformed by your simple acknowledgement of their inherent dignity and worth?